Alright, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I've been talking on and off about our experience with miscarriage, but I'm going to have Jake join me this week just to get a little bit of a different perspective from the male side in going through that and just to hear a little bit more about our journey through it together. So there may be some editings because my camera died a couple times, but he was a trooper and I really appreciate him coming out because this is definitely very out of his comfort zone. Welcome back to the vlog. We have a special guest this week. So something that I've had questions about and things that have helped me is hearing couples talk about their experience together, and I've listened to a couple of podcasts about that, so that's what we're doing this week. So I'm gonna guide the questions so you don't have to free think on a lot of things, and so it's just kind of more guided. So just talking from the beginning of when we first found out, we had been trying for 2 months. So I think we got pregnant relatively quick, which was kind of surprising, I think, to the both of us, of just how easy it was. And then we had the first 2-week wait period. We went to our first appointment. We weren't as far along as we thought we were going to be. We thought I was going to be at 7 weeks and I was actually at 5. So then we had to have basically another 2-week wait period for the appointment where we were going to hear the heartbeat. And I know for women that's a really anxiety provoking time, because it's you don't really feel pregnant yet, your body's not changing yet, so it's you're pregnant but you it's not confirmed. What was that? Where did you feel in those 2 weeks you were really anxious or stressed, or what do you even remember really how you felt during that?
No, I wasn't stressed. I was excited because I thought everything was fine.
What do you feel do you feel the first 2 weeks was different than the second 2 weeks of having the first 2 weeks, then it was we finally had the appointment and then going in. So when we went for the 5-week appointment, basically all they could see was the yolk sac. So we knew that the yolk sac was there, it was healthy, it was in the right place. So it took off a lot of concern of me having an implantation in my fallopian tubes or things like that. But it still was we couldn't see the actual fetal pole or the heartbeat. So do you feel that made you anxious at all, or made the second weeks of waiting harder?
I mean, I didn't like having to wait, obviously, to figure things out, but I wasn't concerned at that point. Everything seemed like it was alright, and we were just early.
Yeah. So at that point we did decide to tell our families. We were initially waiting because we thought the first appointment was going to be the 7-week appointment where we would have heard the heartbeat. We were kind of waiting for that because we had family members that had early miscarriages. So we thought that, not that that means you're in the clear, but it would have felt a little bit more reassuring. But I think after the first appointment, we both were well, I specifically was tired of not telling people. So we did tell all of our parents. We told a couple of close friends, and I think that's something that I feel you've made more comments about than me. I don't think really any part of me regretted telling people that early, but I feel that's something that you've commented on. As retrospectively, do you wish we wouldn't have told people?
No, I mean, I'm one of those people that thinks that you can jinx something. And by saying something too soon, I feel we may have jinxed it.
You feel telling people made us have a miscarriage?
I mean, not obviously not necessarily like that, but I just feel until it was confirmed, I probably wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
Looking back on it.
See, and I think that's where our opinions have. That's I feel the only part of this where we've had really big differing of opinions is. You've said several times I wish we wouldn't have told people, but I think I've been glad that we did, because when we had the appointments that didn't go how we wanted, and we had the week of being really anxious, and then we obviously found out about the miscarriage, I feel all the people we told would have been people I told that I had a miscarriage right away, or were people that were really supportive. But I also don't subscribe to the fact that it jinxed anything. I think what's meant to happen is going to happen irregardless of if you share that or not. But I do think going into a future pregnancy, obviously fingers crossed that we are able to get pregnant again, I will wait this time. And I think the only reason that I would wait this time is just because it's it is hard, because it's you're getting other people's hopes up. Your hopes are up and you're really excited, but then theirs are as well. We talked about that of how it is like kind of a bummer of like when we told my parents we had like this whole plan and they were really, really excited, and like that video was just like really cool to have and watch, and I think both of us said that was like one of our favorite memories ever was telling them. So it's hard because you're let down, but you also feel like they are let down. You feel like that's part of why you like struggle with that?
Well, I mean, not really. It's just, I just have seen people where they get overly excited and they tell people, or just like anything in like I don't know, this is kind of dumb, but like in sports when you like think you already got it in the bag, and then next thing you know you don't, or you think you start telling people that you got this job or something because you had a really good interview, and then you don't get the job, or things like that. Like I've always noticed, like whenever you do things prematurely or say things prematurely before it's actually like, hey, this is 100% happening, tends to not go your way.
I don't feel like I feel like it's operating with a healthy level of skepticism, of like, and again, it will be really different when we get pregnant again. Like, because we have experienced loss, I feel like you will operate differently. Of like, we'll obviously both still be excited, but like, I do feel like there is obviously that underlying like baseline worry and fear. And I think there's with that with any pregnancy, if you have awareness of like how common miscarriages are, which I think we both did because of people close to us that have been through it, but it is different when you've been through it like yourself, of like, there is going to be a lot of things that we do approach differently with this pregnancy as far as like sharing it with other people, because I think you will just naturally be a little bit more guarded.
Yeah.
So going into like back into like the waiting period, so we had like the 2-week wait appointment, 2-week wait appointment, then we went back for that appointment. That was like supposed to be our confirmation appointment. And basically at that point we were expecting me to measure at 7 weeks because we thought that's where I originally was going to be. And then we got to that appointment and I was measuring around 6 and they couldn't detect a heartbeat. So that was like obviously an emotional appointment. It was like really anxiety provoking because it wasn't like, they couldn't definitively tell us like, yes, it's not viable, but it was like, our doctor basically worded it as like, I'm not saying that you won't come in a week and there won't have been things progress, that there won't be a heartbeat, but like I am really concerned because I would have expected to see that at this point. What was like, where was your head at with that?
I mean, it kind of went back and forth. Like part of me was, like, well shit, there you go, like, the baby's dead.
You're just not an eloquent speaker, but it's
and
direct.
then part of me was, like, whenever we would talk to friends and stuff, they would be like, oh, or like, you saw videos where people were like, oh, that happened to me, and then, you know, we went back and everything was fine, and then, you know, our friends were being very encouraging and optimistic about, you know, it'll be fine, everything will work out, you'll be fine. And so that kind of gave me some, I guess, false hope.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, maybe it actually will be alright, and it was just, you know, still a little too early or whatever. Maybe the baby's just a really stubborn little asshole. But, you know, obviously it didn't. And then when we got to that appointment, when she first, like, was doing the ultrasound.
Like the last one or the one where she told us she was concerned?
No, the last one. It looked like the baby had grown at first, and the way she said something, she was like acting like it grew. So I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I think it
was worked out, and then
angle.
And then she just kept looking and looking, and then after a while, I was like, oh,
yeah,
never mind.
So. I do think that like the week between those two appointments, I feel like you were a lot more optimistic than I was, which was helpful because it's like, it's a hard week because there's literally nothing you can do. And I think that's like almost the worst part about it is like, it really was like out of our control, and it was really just like this waiting game. And I feel like part of me like knew, like physically I felt a little bit different, like some of the symptoms I had, like it is, like I told you that the other day of like, you're like, am I in my head? Am I still feeling this or not? I think some of that had changed. And then obviously at the appointment, I don't think either of us really had the wherewithal to like ask any questions because like we went into the appointment like so excited to like hear a heartbeat, and like we had talked to so many family and friends, and like that appointment is like so cool, and so it's like you're going there like waiting for this big thing, and then like to not get to have it, I think was really like devastating. And I think it like clicked for me a couple days later of like, oh, because I think we were frustrated because it was like we went in and we thought we were going to be 7 weeks and we were 5 weeks, and then we went back and we thought we were going to be 7 weeks and I was measuring 6 weeks. We're like, well, holy shit, like how far along actually am I? And then it clicked in my head of like, oh, I should be 7 weeks, and the reason I'm not isn't because I'm behind, it's because there's something wrong. And I feel like once that clicked, like I like kind of knew, but you like don't want to admit it to yourself. And like you said, all our friends were like, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And like, what are they gonna say? They're not gonna be like,
Right.
you know what I mean? But I do think like your level of optimism was helpful in a sense of like, it helped me get through that week.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was just a pretty shit week, I'm not gonna lie. So then going into the last appointment, I will say that I liked how our OB handled like the appointment before that. I think you were a little bit frustrated, but I think she did a good job of like saying, okay, it's not definitive. Like there wasn't a way for them to definitively know, but I think she had a pretty good idea. And I think she did a good job of like kind of bracing us coming into the last appointment. So like I didn't go into it completely blindsided. Not that anything can make hearing that easier, but I do feel like it prepared me a little bit. So before that appointment, I had like given Jake my list of questions. I was like, if things are fine, I'm definitely going to be able to ask questions. But if they're not, I knew that like for me to be able to like not cry and speak would have been pretty impossible. So I had like given you a list, and I think I went in like kind of knowing, and then we literally had to wait in the waiting room for like 10,000 years. Do you feel like going into that appointment that you kind of like knew, or do you feel like there was still a pretty big part of you that like felt like things were going to be okay?
No, I mean, it was probably like 60-40.
Like 60 in which side?
Like that it was not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then like just the appointment taking forever for us to get back there was kind of annoying.
Yeah, I feel like that's the two. It's kind of like sometimes I wait a long time, sometimes I don't. But
well, and it's not necessarily with like like the doctor, the way she handled it. Like it wasn't like, it was nice that she like gave us that.
like space.
No, like told us beforehand like what to expect and whatnot. But I also the thing that would the thing that was frustrating to me is like, I don't know if part of me is like, I'd rather not know for like the woman, because that puts a lot of stress on the woman, and if the baby is in fact okay,
Yeah.
now you've just made her very stressed, and now the baby might not be okay.
I get that perspective, like totally. I do get that, but like this, I think the stress would have been there either way. Like going to an appointment where we expected to see a heartbeat, we didn't, and we weren't measuring as far along, I would have been stressed irregardless. You know what I mean? Like whether she would have said that or not, and I don't think that a stress for 1 week would have been like the factor that made or broke. Like, but I do get where you're coming from, because I think throughout the whole time, like you were very concerned about like my stress levels throughout all of those appointments, like with them just like obviously not being what we thought they were going to be going into it.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why I didn't agree with that 100%. But
Yeah.
and also it was just like, I was in that group of believing that
Like
your
speaking it into
cycle,
an existence.
well,
Or what?
no, like your cycle is all kind of weird, and I just
You
thought,
do grind my gears about that, because it's not weird. It's
and
just
so I just
longer.
thought that, you know, maybe
We were behind.
we were actually behind. It wasn't this, oh, the baby stopped growing at
Yeah.
6 weeks.
Which
So
we were originally.
I was just frustrated with that, because we had been told this, and I was feeling like we were being told something else, and then we're also on top of that being like, well, we should be.
Yeah. It definitely was like
So I'm
confusing.
like, well, if we're really only at 5 weeks, then it would be the same case as last time, so maybe you shouldn't have told us that. But then, I mean, everything ended up being right, so.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. My cycle's not weird, it's just longer. So when we went to the first appointment and it was 5 weeks and we thought it was going to be 7, my cycle's 35 to 40 days. A normal cycle's 28. So for us to be tracking behind wasn't abnormal, right? We came to the next appointment where I should have been measuring 7 and I was measuring 6. So it wasn't that like, oh, I was further behind than they thought. It was, I was originally those 2 weeks behind. That probably would have continued throughout my pregnancy. But the issue is that obviously they grew, they had a heartbeat until like that 6 week spot, which was why, you know what I mean? But I think from our perspective, we were both kind of like frustrated about that because it was kind of confusing of like constantly thinking we were going to be at the spot, and like we had the app that like tracks your baby's development. It was like, oh, today they're this, and then it was like, oh, just kidding, we're not there yet. And then it's like, oh, today they're this, oh, just kidding, we're not there yet. Do you feel like that was kind of the hardest part of it?
Yeah, it just felt like we were going backwards.
Yeah.
And obviously we're going all the way back now, but
yeah.
I thought we were getting closer to it. And I always keep thinking back to like the day we found out, and I had to drive somewhere afterwards, and I was just like really happy because I'd always wondered like, am I even able to do this? Or you know, are we ever gonna have kids? And then it kind of, you know, you being pregnant kind of told me, oh, it's actually gonna happen. I'm gonna have a kid, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. And now it's kind of come back to where I have to worry about it.
Yeah. And I will say, I think something that you pointed out for me, like when it was really frustrating in the moment of like not getting to have like a successful pregnancy, and like there are a lot of concerns that come with that of like things that could be wrong with either of us. I think obviously, especially from the woman's side, because your body is responsible for so much of that, of like trying to focus on like, you know, I did go a really long time without a cycle, and then like I got my cycle back, and I've had it back for a long time. And then we were really concerned, like, okay, am I even ovulating? And then we found out that I was ovulating. And then we were both really concerned, like you said, like, will I even be able to get pregnant? And like, once we were actually intentional about it, I got pregnant, like literally, I think within, like 2 months. So I think just trying to focus on those things, and like, the odds are with most miscarriages that it is just like a chromosomal issue. And so like, obviously, we are kind of operating under that assumption unless we do like have further like issues. But
Right.
It is like hard. I mean, and
it just seemed like, you know, you had that checked off. But yeah.
And I don't think people think about that, like from your perspective, like as a guy worrying if something's wrong with you. Like when people have miscarriages, I think most of what's talked about is like what a woman goes through, and like feeling guilty about, you know, like your body not being able to do that, or worrying if something's wrong with you, and like why can't I do that, which were all feelings that I really had. But I don't think that I even ever thought about like you feeling that way, because obviously like it is not a lesser role, but your body isn't like, you know, you have the job and then your job's done and it's my job, but like there are still parts of that are involved in it, and I never really thought about like you being stressed or worried about that.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a chromosomal thing, that could happen.
I mean, it's half and half, so it's going to be a little bit of both, but...
But, yeah, no, like, I mean, I guess, I mean, obviously I haven't been the healthiest person in the world.
But you're not unhealthy.
And it was just, you know, I felt like I've always really wanted kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like...
I mean, you wanted it before I did. I think you were in a place where you were, like, ready to get pregnant probably, like, half a year before I was.
Yeah. But, I mean, it was like... I don't know, just... Part of me felt like I really wanted it, but there's a good chance that it might never happen for me.
What? Like, you felt like that before we ever got pregnant?
Yeah, like, I was just like, maybe you're not able to have kids, or I'm not able to, make kids.
Why do you feel like you felt like that?
No, I just felt like it was just, I don't know why.
Like a concern?
Yeah, and so I was just like, and that's why it was like so overwhelming, like I was so happy when it happened. It was because I was like, oh crap.
Almost like relief that like, oh, we can do this.
We can do it, and I'm gonna, like now, like if I only have one kid, I know I've had a kid that can carry on the family, and like they can, there's not much you can like everybody's always so concerned about all this stuff, and like you're forgotten about after you die, pretty.
I mean, to a sense, I mean, not by the
But
people
like
that love you, but...
if you leave a kid behind, that's part of you. I'm like...
Yeah.
And then like, if they have kids...
I do think that is like, it's important to me too, but I do think that is maybe more of a male perspective of like leaving a legacy in a sense, is like almost what you're getting at.
you know, I want to have kids so that they can do something maybe greater than me, and
Yeah.
then my grandkids can do something greater, and then it's just like, I don't know.
And that's something we've talked about, right? Like you have this really high, like finding out you're pregnant. Like I think that's probably, I would say, like the most joy we've probably ever felt. Like I think personally, I can say that. I'm sure you would say the same. Of like that's literally like the happiest moment in our life, like hands down, the best memory. And like you're so excited, and then we found out that I miscarried, and that's like the lowest low that I think I've ever felt. And so it is really hard to like have something that made you so happy, like then make you so sad. And I think we got into that last appointment, and like I made you like stand by my like head and like hold your hand because I just like felt I just knew like I knew that it wasn't going to be what we wanted it to be. And like you said, I think she initially went in and there was like that little bit of hope, and then like the more she was looking at things, I think it set into both of us pretty much at the same time of like.
Yeah.
And I think for me it was just like literally like I don't even know how to like explain the emotion of just like I mean it was just like instant like tears. But do you like feel like you remember how you felt in that moment, or like know how to verbalize that even?
Yeah, honestly, I was more concerned about like you than anything else,
Yeah.
because I didn't. I mean, and it's weird. Like it doesn't affect guys as much in that situation because it's so early on, and like
Okay, yeah, I'm really curious to hear this, like the
And,
difference
like,
in that.
we haven't had as much of a bond to to the baby as like I never felt a heartbeat or saw one, right? But like you actually were carrying it, right? So
Yeah.
it definitely affects women a lot more. Um,
But you're still
I don't think like it really like obviously it sucks, and like but I think where most of mine I guess sadness or whatever it came from was more so directed towards like I didn't like seeing you so upset and so
Yeah.
sad and so hurt. So like that was more so it than
my camera died, so we're picking up where we left off.
No, I was just saying like what made me like that. What really made me sad was just seeing you upset and like hurting, and like knowing that you did just in that short amount of time your body was going through a lot, and you're obviously very sleepy and all that. And I don't know, like for me it was more about that than like actually the baby itself. Like I don't feel like the connection is
As strong as it
as
is for like a
strong.
woman.
Yeah, and it's not anything like obviously like we called it Blueberry and I was excited for it, and it was exciting, but and like I was already loving the baby whatever, but it was just more I was more concerned about you and your health and stuff like that, and just seeing you that way. And then obviously like I said previously, it's just
The concern of like
the going back to like when I found out and how happy I was, like that part sucked. Like just having to realize, oh shit, I gotta do that again.
Yeah.
And hopefully, everything goes as planned next time. But like I said, more than anything, I was more concerned. So in that moment, I was concerned about you and seeing you upset and just like, or what's our next steps from here?
Yeah. And I think that is like part of it that's been hard for me, like especially because like I was so emotional, like understandably, because like it was an early loss. But I think it's like understanding that like, at least from my perspective, it's like as soon as we had that like positive test, it was like really real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, even though it wasn't a place where I was like showing or things like that, like you are connected and it is like physically a part of you, so it is like really hard to lose that in that sense. But I think also for both of us, like we had been trying to get pregnant, so we had been really looking forward to it. We had like obviously already had discussions about like what our family would look like, and then like that becomes I think more solidified when we found out we were pregnant. And then we're still like we had talked about what we wanted to do with our house and like planning like your office becoming a nursery, and like you had like we had talked about oh, they can't come to your football games, but like I could bring them to your basketball game and like putting them in little matching shoes. Like you have like planned this whole life with this child that like you obviously have, like you think you're going to have. And so I think it is, grieving the loss of a lot of that. And we've talked about it since then, which has been like, 5 weeks since we miscarried, which it feels weird that it's been that long. Just like not being where we thought we would be. Like, oh, we would have been finished with the first trimester. Oh, we would have been, you've said that too, like feeling like we almost got like set back.
Yeah. No, I mean, and everything, and that's why I told you before, is like everything kind of seemed too good to be true. Like, it didn't take as long at all.
Yeah.
Like, you started doing the Anita strips and literally you ovulated
after the first cycle. Yeah.
Like, and then they also would line up for the baby to be the oldest in their class.
Oh, that's been a very big wish of Jake, is that his kid is the oldest in their class because he thinks it's an athletic advantage.
Yes. Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers will show you the proof.
Oh my gosh. Like you felt like that when we were, like before we miscarried, or like retrospectively, that's how you felt?
I think it was a little of both. Like, I think in the back of my head, I was like, oh, this seems just too good to be true. And
see, and I looked at that as like, oh, this is like, it's just lining perfectly. Like, it's how it was meant to be.
Well, I'm a little bit more negative. But, another thing that's helped me through all of it, that helped me, I think, also is like the same day we found out that we had the miscarriage. Well, part of it was like we already kind of knew going in.
Yeah, we were kind of
so
expecting
that helped. Because I even got to come home the day where we kind of already knew.
Yeah, like from you didn't go to work.
But the day that we found out officially, I had a game. I had to go coach.
And we had talked about that beforehand, like knowing how that appointment may go.
Yeah.
That like we both agreed that we felt like that you needed to do that. Like
yeah, but it was a nice place to go and get my head away from things. And like that's one thing I've noticed so far, and like as far as like coaching, especially like just the basketball side, is like that kind of consumes all my thoughts whenever I'm doing it, and like
it keeps you distracted. So
yeah, so like even like the practice, what I'm gonna do the next day, or what we need to fix and what we need to work on and things like that. And it sounds stupid because it's middle school basketball and it's kind of.
But you care, and you care about the kids.
Yeah, but obviously like I have bigger goals, and this kind of stuff will help me become a better coach and be able to do all that stuff and yada yada. But so it kept me really distracted because I'm always like so fixated on that and trying.
Yeah, but do you think part of that is like avoidance? Like, yeah, you don't want to sit and think about it all the time. Like, you do have to grieve and like move through an acceptance process. But do you think that like part of you did that to like avoid?
Not really. I think I just did it naturally.
And I'm curious. I am just curious because again, part of that's just people handle things differently, person to person. Yeah. But I do think it is different also for women to men. Of like, because you look at like, okay, obviously my job's quite flexible, and so like it was nice that like, I like that day I literally didn't do like I came home. You were home for probably like 2 hours, and then you had to go back to work, and so like I went over to my parents because I didn't want to be like alone. But like for me, it was like I felt like I needed the space to like do nothing versus like you obviously felt better going and like being more in like your normal routine and things like that right away.
Yeah, I think it just happened naturally for me, and like I said to begin with, like my concern was more with you,
yeah,
than anything else, and I think that's the case for most men.
Yeah.
I don't think that, especially that early on. Like I could see if this stuff happened later on in the pregnancy,
like where you would have felt more connected.
Yeah, or like people that have problems with like at the birth, or things like that. Like then it makes sense for like
your physical connection is different.
Like I think
from a woman's at that point connection.
the male is probably pretty connected to the baby, and like obviously like probably hearing the baby's heartbeat through the stomach and things like that, and seeing the heartbeat on the ultrasounds and things like that. And like I think when miscarriages happen this early on and you don't even see a heartbeat, I don't think that connection really happens.
for like a man.
Yeah. And I don't think that's like, I would say that that's probably how it would be for most guys. I mean, every guy's different.
I mean, everybody's different.
But, like, and it's not to say that I obviously want the baby.
Yeah.
Like,
It's just that you felt like your grieving process was a lot different.
Like, mine was more based towards how you were feeling. I just didn't like seeing you, like, hurt like that. And,
yeah. And I don't think that that's, like, you were, like, by no means, like, yes, you didn't feel as, like, emotionally attached, but you were, like, never made me feel like I shouldn't have been. Like, and, you know, I think that's something that's hard for women who do, like, experience early pregnancy loss, and was, like, thoughts that I had go through my head that I did express to you of, like, why am I so sad? It was really early. Like, should I even be this sad because it was early, and, like, women have lost, like, later in pregnancy, so, like, who am I to feel this way? And like we talked about, like, there is such an attachment, especially from a woman's perspective, like when you find out you're pregnant and you have, like, and we had envisioned this, like, whole life, and, like, I was really excited to, like, see you be a dad. Like, you were very involved, like, from the get with, like, you got books that you were reading of, like, every week in pregnancy and, like, asking me all the questions, and, like, I know you're going to be a great father, but it, like, was cool to, like, almost see you start to, like, make that transition. So it was, like, you know, you're obviously grieving the loss of, like, losing the baby, even though it was early on, but you are grieving, like, a lot of the, like, expectations you had. So it was really hard for me, and I will say, like, to your credit, I felt like you gave me, like, a lot of the space and permission that I needed to, like, feel that way. And, like, I feel like I've told you this, maybe I haven't, but, like, I think the one thing you said to me that made a really big difference for me, like, feeling like it was okay to feel how I felt, was, like, that there's not a right way to, like, grieve, or, like, you told me, like, there's no right or wrong way for you to feel, and there's, like, no right or wrong length of time to feel that for, and, like, feel how you need to feel for however long you need to, and those were things that I felt like were really helpful for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I believe that because, like, obviously, I think that was, like, your first time actually losing somebody close to you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've had family members die, but nobody that I've been, like, very intimately close with.
And so, you know, obviously I've had a few people die in my life, so I just knew that, you know, there's no, and seeing my dad lose, you know, my grandma and his mom, like, that sucked. So, like, just knowing everybody's grief cycles differently, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, obviously, like, I've seen friends lose their moms at a young age.
Yeah.
So, like, I just knew, like, you know, I think people try to put time limits on things, like, okay, you should be good now, or okay, you should return to work now, or whatever. And I think that's, like, that goes to also, like, when girls actually give birth all the way through, and then they are, like, expected to go back to work.
Yeah, you literally just shoved a human out of you.
So, I mean, I think these, like, I think, you know, 2 months is a good enough time, let's return to work. Like, I think putting time limits on things is dumb.
Yeah.
Like, what if they had, you know, unexpected things with their pregnancy that caused...
Well, everybody's different, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I just think everybody's time for recovery and whatnot and grief is different and should be treated as such. I don't think there's one size fits all. So,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people tend to do that in those kind of times. It's like, okay, I should probably be upset for a couple days and then should we get back to normal?
Yeah, which is definitely, I think part of me felt that way, like, I should be okay now, and then part of me felt like I'm never gonna feel okay. Like, I like, very vividly, I'm, like, trying not to cry. I feel like it's good that we did this video so far out, or I would have cried this entire time, but, like, I remember very vividly, like, turning to you and being like, when is this not gonna hurt anymore? And, like, I don't know, like, I mean, obviously we know each other really well, but I think you did a really good job of just, like, knowing that I needed to just be able to feel those things, and, like, that you didn't have to have an answer or a solution. Like, honestly, with losing a baby, like, I don't think there is an answer or a solution, especially in that moment, just, like, hugging me and, like, letting me be sad, and knowing that, like, you know, especially, like, after the DNC and having everything removed, like, knowing that my emotions were also going to be, like, all over the place, and my hormones, and, like, there was moments where I would be totally fine, and then I feel like a couple moments later I would just be, like, absolutely bawling, and I think you did a really good job of, like, not ever making me feel, like, wrong or bad or guilty for feeling the ways that I felt.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that was hard to, like, physically, like, obviously again, it was like early, it wasn't like I like physically was going through anything wild, and we did opt for a DNC so that I wasn't like passing things on my own. But was that something that you felt like was hard, like surgery day? And there's probably things you remember about that that I don't, because I was under anesthesia. But I know that that was like obviously a day for me that just made things feel really like final. Like I told you going into it, even though the baby didn't have a heartbeat, like it was still in me, and then that made it like really, really finite.
I mean, nothing really like. I just felt like I just kind of filed it all away into the same bucket. I'm just like, this is part of it.
Yeah.
So there was really nothing different about it. It was just like, well, we gotta do this part of the journey.
Yeah.
Which is what I tell you all the time is like, it's just one big long journey, and ours is
just getting started. That's your big, with like his wisdom phrases. We're just at the beginning of the journey. I think this was something we had talked about before, just like seeing other people go through like losses and knowing that like, you know, obviously I think if you have multiple, it obviously gets exponentially harder and there's a lot more concerns that come into play, but just like how that impacted like our relationship and our marriage, do you feel like it made a difference, or do you feel like things have just kind of been the same, or?
I feel like things have been the same. I mean, I think there was like a feeling of like, not that like marriage doesn't already feel like that, like you're like committed to this person and you know, you're not.
Yeah.
But like whenever there's like, oh, we've created this human.
Yeah.
That's like, I felt like that was like the ultimate, like, alright, that's the bond. It's not like, now it's like really cemented.
Yeah. I think I said that to you, but I worded it differently of like, obviously we've been very, like we're very connected. We're like, you know what I mean? We have I would say a good relationship, but it does almost make you feel more like connected to that person because it is like this physical thing that is literally a combination of the two of us.
Yeah. And so there was that, and then like I think just obviously I don't think that like the miscarriage changed that. Like I think we're still just as close as we.
I mean, I would argue that it probably has brought us closer in a lot of ways of just like experiencing that together, and like we were literally just talking about this, but of just like how much I relied on you like throughout all that. I don't obviously think you were really relying on me, but like I did rely on you a lot, and there are like a lot of times in the 2 weeks that I think there are a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to like handle, like had it not been for your support. And like obviously we had a lot of support from my family and friends, and like I appreciate that so much, but it was like different having them versus having you, because it was like nobody else knew what that experience was like for us other than us. Like you were the person I felt like I was going through it with, if that makes sense. But
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's changed. Like I said, I don't think it's made things worse. I mean, I don't think it's made like. I think we've grown stronger, but I also already thought that our relationship was already strong. Otherwise, I don't think we would have started this to begin with.
Yeah, if you're not in that place.
So
yeah.
Nothing's really changed.
I mean, I think you also grow individually though. Like you're going through a new experience, and that's something that we've talked about since. Of like, I think maybe that's been harder for me to like navigate, is like kind of figuring out what now looks like. Do you feel like it's been hard for you to like kind of navigate life in between? Like we were pregnant and we were really excited, and you know, I think we're obviously in a place where we both have felt like when physically I'm ready to get pregnant again, we both like want to start trying again, but we're kind of in this like in between phase where we don't have what we thought we were going to have, but we also can't really have what we want. Is that something that's been hard for you?
Not really. It's just been like trying to be patient. Like letting all the healing go on, and so that I can, so that we can start that again. But it's not been anything like that I've struggled with or anything. Just trying to be patient, which I think that can apply to a lot of things in life. Just trying to be patient.
Yeah, I think for me it's just been understanding like the timing of things, and I don't know, maybe again that's like maybe it's a different perspective for me because like my body physically went through it, but like it has been like a really weird season of life of just like, we don't know how long it's going to take for us to get pregnant again, right? Like we don't know what any of that's going to look like, and so not wishing away this chunk of time, right? Like, because I think obviously more than anything, like I just want to be pregnant, I want to have a family. It was like, it felt like we had that and then we lost it, and I think for both of us, probably the thing we want more than anything else, but like, not wishing away the time that we're in to just like have that already, because there is a lot of like things that are happening in our life right now that are like important and things that we don't want to miss. I think that's been hard for me to like be okay just kind of like sitting in the in-between.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but or if that's something you felt.
No, I mean, I'm just, honestly, I have a lot of things that need to be completed.
Yeah.
That have been taking up a lot of my time to even really.
I mean, yeah, your job is a lot more stressful than mine for sure. And has a lot less flexibility.
I was trying to get that stuff done in this time.
Yeah.
And then, whenever it's go time again, it's go time.
I mean, it is like different, but the same. Of like you're working on like developing yourself, whether it's personally or in your career. Like you're putting yourself in the best place possible, so that when it is like God's timing for our family, you're the most ready, right? Like not that we weren't ready before, but like there obviously are things that you can develop and grow in, and like same for me, but in a very different way of just like growing individually and learning more about myself, so that when the timing is right, like we've grown more and are putting ourselves to be in the best place possible to have that.
Yeah.
So we're kind of the same.
Okay.
And better.
Alright.
And then the last question, is there like any part of you going into like future pregnancies that you feel like is like nervous or scared? Because I think that's something for a lot of women is like, I'm excited. Like when I get pregnant, I know I'll be excited, but I know there's also going to be a part of me that is like scared or nervous that like something's wrong with me, or like I am terrified to experience that again, because it was just like so hard and sad, and I feel like obviously like that happening more than once, I think some of that does like exponentiate.
Nothing that I'm really scared about. More so like if it were to happen again the next time, then I would probably get pretty scared, because it's like,
okay, something's up.
Yeah, something's wrong, with me, or possibly like
with me.
You, and we need to figure out if this is something that we can do something about this, or maybe this isn't something that we're able to achieve.
Yeah, I think for me it's just been like, and this is something that my sister-in-law said to me that was really, really helpful, like choosing hope, not fear, of like, there's things that it's just accepting that there's things that are out of our control. And I think that's probably something that's been a harder lesson for me to learn than you, because I am a lot bit more like scheduled and type A, and like wanting to have like control over things. And I think that's something that you've always helped like balance me out with, of like, I can't have control over everything, and you have been, I think, through the whole thing, very hopeful of like, and that's something that you said to me, like, this is just the beginning of our journey, it's not the end. And so choosing to live in hope for like what God's plan is for our family and what that's going to look like, instead of living in the fear of like, okay, well, what if, because we can't really control those things.
Right.
Well, thanks for joining. 10 out of 10. Where can the people follow you?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.